Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to another very fun episode in our Firebase social login series. I really hope you guys have been enjoying everything so far. In today's video, we're going to talk about how to actually log into our Firebase application using Google Sign-In. So this is actually pretty fun and pretty easy, but it's a little tedious. So let's go ahead and get started first with a demo of the application, and then I'll tell you what you guys actually need to know, and I'll teach you guys how to implement this feature for today. Okay, our demo right here. So this is just the current application that we have as of the last episode. And our demo right here includes a Google Sign-In button that will do this upon clicking. So it throws me over to the Google website, allows me to authenticate after you punch in your credentials, and hit the allow. It's going to toss us back to our app, and then this is actually making a call behind the scenes to authenticate our Google user with Firebase, right? And what that actually does is this right here. So if I go into Firebase console and go into the authentication tab, that Firebase call actually created a Google user inside of my user tab right here. And what that means is I was able to successfully use my Google account to create a Firebase account in order to store a bunch of information that way. This way I can avoid using email and password, which is a little difficult for users, especially on their phones. So that's how the feature looks like. And you'll notice that this console for our current application doesn't have that Google user. So what are the steps in order to kind of accomplish today's feature? The first thing we want to do is to actually install the pod for Google Sign-In. So easy stuff there. Secondly, we'll talk about how to implement this Google Sign-In button, and then we'll configure our application to actually allow the authentication process to send us back this user, and then we'll send it off to the Firebase authentication side to actually get this user in there. So all that's pretty good. I do have to kind of caution that the steps to actually configure all this it's a little tedious, and I'm going to try to show you guys exactly what is going on here. So first step is to head over to Chrome browser or whatever browser is your favorite. You want to head over to Docs Auth iOS Google Sign-In for the Firebase website. And the Firebase team, they did a really good job in putting together this guide. However, I find that it is a bit long, and the way that you actually set up everything is kind of confusing. You don't really know what's going on until you actually complete the whole thing. So let's go ahead and first install the pod, and then I'll show you guys how to actually follow the guide a little bit more easily. Okay, so going into terminal. Let's clear all this nasty stuff out. And I am currently inside of my Firebase social login project. Obviously, you want to hit open pod file. Hope you guys are pretty used to this by now. You want to copy over that Google Sign-In pod, save, quit, and now you can just say pod install like that. And it's going to install everything. And that's all we need for terminal. And hopefully I don't have to go back to it. So what this means is if I run this project now, everything should be okay. And it should hopefully take over this screen right here. So I'm going to shrink this similar to the corner like that. And the application is now kind of up and running, loading this project right here. So what you're going to see are the two Facebook buttons from previous episode. And we will first confirm that our SDK is properly installed. And the way to do that is to just go into View Controller right here and type in import Google Sign-In. So if I run the application, everything is going to be A-OK. All right, so pretty good start. And now we're kind of ready to go back to the guide here. So let's take a look at what you actually have to do in this entire guide. So there's step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and this optional guy, and then finally this last step here. So definitely a ton of steps to go through, and if you don't really understand what's going on, it's really easy to get lost in all of these steps here. So the easiest way to actually do this is, instead of blindly following the guide and just like praying that everything works at the end, it's actually easier to start setting up the Google sign-in button and then figure out step by step as to what it is that you need to modify to get the sign-in to actually work. Okay. All right. So the way to actually start off, the better way is to actually do this instead. So inside of view did load, I'm going to go down to the very bottom of this method. So these methods, they're responsible for adding those two buttons inside of the app. I'm going to add the Google sign-in button now. Okay, here we go. All right, first line of code for today will be this. So let Google, say Google button, equals GID sign-in button, like that. And let's use a empty constructor and say Google button dot frame equals something. So the way I'm going to place this below this blue button is to take this frame right here and just paste it there. And for the Y value, I'll just add a value of 66. And now we'll say view add subview of Google button. Okay, so running this application now, we're actually going to see what the button looks like. And this is going to allow us to actually play around with the application to see what works and what doesn't, okay? And the first thing to do is actually tap the button to see what it does. Okay, now upon tapping that button, you'll see this error down here. And we're just going to go through slowly each one of these errors. Okay, you must specify client ID for GID sign-in. And if you were to follow this guide, you'll notice that the very first step is to actually do this configuration right here. So I'm going to fix that error by going into app delegate right here. And first I'll import Google sign-in. And then I'm going to actually plug in the client ID that it needs, like this. So it's GID sign-in. Let's see, this right here, shared instance, delegate, dot client, let's see, nope, client ID equals, what does it equal? This stuff right here. And I'm going to paste that in. And now I'm going to run the application. This error is actually going to go away. And we're going to get a different error, and we'll fix that when we get to it. So sign in there. And now let's take a look at this error right here. It's saying that UI delegate must either be UIB controller or implement some of these methods, right? And that is pretty confusing. And inside of the guide, it actually tells you how to fix that. Let's see, right here in step 7. And you can already see that the guide is actually not, it's not written in the steps that you actually need to implement this in. So go ahead and head over to view controller right here. And right underneath, let's see, this add sign-in button for the Google, we'll say GID, shared instance, UI delegate equals self right there, and run the application. And now it's saying that the self right here needs to actually be GID sign-in UI delegate, which means I'll conform to this GID UI delegate right here and run the application. So that is that. And now the application is loading. I'll click on this guy, and it's going to actually give me a different error right now. So before I fix that error, I want to go back to view controller, and I want to do a little bit of code refactoring, because this view to load guy is getting a little messy. Okay, so what is the best way to refactor this? And what I will do is to just say set up Facebook buttons as a method up there. Let's just copy the name down here. We'll say file private function of that. And here we go. We can copy all of this stuff here. So cut that, paste that in there. And now we have a lot of space to actually set up our Google button, and a further step of refactoring that I will typically do is to say set up Google buttons and put that code that we just typed earlier in that method. And finally, we'll say set up Google buttons. Now your view load is properly separated into two sub methods that kind of do what they say right there. All right. So running the application, we still get our crash right here. That tells us to do something with this thing called reverse client ID. And so tap on that, expect our crash again, and you'll see it's saying it's missing this URL scheme. And if you go back to this guide right here, the very first step is telling you to actually do this. And this is kind of why you need this step. If you go to your target right here, go to this info, unswirl this URL type, you can actually need to just copy this com up to this last character right there. And then you need to hit this add button, hit this paste, and there you go. So I believe the reason why you need this URL type is because iOS won't allow you to open up these URLs unless you specify them in this configuration right here. And if we click on that, you'll notice this is pretty much all you need to do in order to configure an application to go to Google to authenticate your account, okay? So that is most of the steps that we need to implement in our application. And now let's just see what happens when you hit the allow button right here. So I'm gonna hit the allow, and it's going to pretty much sit there in the browser. You notice that it doesn't take me back to the application. And the way to fix that is to look at the guide again. And we want to go into step number 4 here. I want to copy this entire thing. And they want to tell you, they're telling you to implement this in OpenURL inside of app delegate, which is this right here. You notice that things do look a little different because this is currently Swift 3 syntax, and the guide is in Swift 2.3, I believe. And inside of here, inside of this little bit of code, I'm going to paste all that stuff. And it's going to flag a couple of errors. This first syntax change should just say handle. And then here is, let's see, let me get rid of the file explorer there. The two changes we need to do is for source application, we need to copy over what we have for the Facebook guide. Just copy all that there and paste it, I believe, right there. That looks good. And for this, we'll need to paste in here as well. And bam, there we go. So I'm going to run the application one more time with that change. And what it's going to do is, instead of just sitting there in the Safari view controller browser, which is what this guy is right here, we will hit allow, and it's actually going to take me back to my application because this open URL is actually being handled now by GID sign-in. And that's kind of why we need that step there. Okay, so pretty much done with most of these steps. And step 5 is actually the last step that we need to implement to get all of this stuff working. Okay, so step 5 is kind of doing this right here. So inside of app did finish launching with options, you need to kind of know when the user signed in with Google. And the way to, for us to actually know that is to implement this GID sign in right here, shared instance delegate equals self, and the delegate will tell us when the user is signed in. There we go. So it's telling us that it's an error because this needs to be GID sign in delegate like that. And next we need to actually conform to this method called did sign in for a user. And if you command click into this, you'll see that method right here. Just go back. Here we go. Let's just say print 1, 2, 3 and run the application again. It's actually going to print out this 1, 2, 3 immediately after I sign in. And let's just see if that is indeed correct. So you see print 1, 2, 3 down there. And the reason why it doesn't toss me back to the Google Authenticator is because I'm already signed in and the SDK knows about it. So we will implement the rest of this method right here by first checking the error. If let error equals, let's just see this error right there, print failed to log into Google, and let's just give it the error right there and return. Otherwise, we will say print perhaps successfully logged into Google. And we actually have this user guy right here as well. So let's just run this application one more time to confirm everything is working and that we don't have an error when we get tossed back to our application from Google. So sign in, and it says successfully logged into Google. And that's kind of all we need for everything to start working with Firebase, okay? All right, so everything is kind of done. I don't think we need any of this stuff. So let's go ahead and move on to step number 3 of this guide. And now we're ready to actually use this Google user as a Firebase user inside of Firebase Auth. And the way we will do that is to, I look at this did sign in for method right here. And after we've successfully logged in, all we need to do is call Firebase auth right here, auth, and sign in with this credential method like that, right? And so this is very similar to the actual Facebook authentication call. It's almost exactly the same. We need this credential, and how do we construct this guy with Google? The way to do that is just say let credentials equals FIR Google provider, like that, credential with these 2 parameters, ID token and access token. And your first question is, well, how do we get these 2 parameters? It's actually quite easy if you just unwrap it. So here's how you actually get it, right? You get ID token. So I think that's how you get it. How do you get it? So let's see what the guide says. All right, user authentication and authentication ID token. Okay, there we go. So this needs to say authentication and ID token is how you get this guy, and you would get the access token very similarly. And to do this a little bit safer, I would just say guard let ID token equals that, else return, and similarly, let's see that, let access token equals user authentication access token, else return, and plug in this with ID token and access token like that. And here we'll say credential like that. And I believe this will actually indeed crash if authentication is a nil object. So be careful with that. We'll hit enter here for the completion handler error. We'll just say if let error equals error. Print fail to, let's see, create a Firebase user with Google account. There we go. This is plugging the error at the very end of that print statement. And here we'll say print successfully logged into Firebase with Google. And there we go. I think we can print out user.uid as well. So this is the user ID of our Firebase user. Okay, and to get rid of this error, you can actually unwrap uid equals user.uid perhaps. Maybe not the best thing to do, but just to get rid of that warning, we'll unwrap it with a guard statement right there. So all of this is going to create our Firebase user with our Google account. And if I go into the browser right here, you'll see that the authentication tab, users, only contains my Facebook account. So if I hit this and try to log in, going back to Xcode, the very first error, it says that enable the Google authenticator inside our Firebase is basically this error message down there. And if you go into authentication sign-in method and hit Google, enable, save, like that, I believe if you hit sign in, it might work. See? So there we go. All right, the error is gone now. Successfully logged into Google and now successfully logged into Firebase with Google. And this is my now unique user ID for Firebase. Going back into users right here, you'll see my account, let's build that app at gmail.com, is being created right here today on November 2nd. And the provider obviously now says Google. So that's pretty good. Let's see, how am I doing on time here? Quickly, I want to show you guys how to implement this custom button right here. So it's actually pretty easy. If you go back to View Controller, look at Setup Google buttons right there. Let's just add another button. Let custom button equals, let's see, UI button right here with a type of system, and custom button dot frame equals whatever this is right here. I'm just going to do this as quickly as I can. The secret to this is to just keep on adding 66 to the Y value. And now we can say view add some view of custom button like that. And while we're here, I'm going to set the background color to just say, let's see, orange, and try to run this, okay? So what this is going to do is just place this big orange button underneath the Google sign button like this right here. Now to get the title to show up, you can just say set title of something like custom. See, custom Google sign in with a normal state. It's going to be wrong color, but you know, that's fine. Upon hitting this button right here, if you click on it, you need to perform an action. And this action will be this add target guy right here of self. Selector will actually be the action to handle custom Google sign in. Let's just copy this guy right here, touch up inside for that event, function of that. And here is the actual secret to the custom login, right? You want to call GID sign in shared instance and call sign in. So with that button and this method being handled for the action of touching it, it's going to call the sign in method manually for us. So hit that, and you're going to look at the bottom right here. It's going to give me the exact same messages, the successful logged in messages from the previous login with the actual SDK button. Now to get this title to be white, let's just do this while we're at it right here. Set title, color of white for normal. If you want to set up the font to be something else, you can say title label. Font equals UI, let's see, font bold, system font of 14 perhaps. Usually buttons have a bold font to it. And if you want your buttons to look like that, you can just set it up this way. It looks a little bit nicer. Click on that. You get your user down here. That's pretty much it. Okay, that about wraps it up for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to leave a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Next episode, we're going to talk about how to actually log in with Twitter and how to actually install the SDKs as well. Finally, if you want to download today's project and all the code for today's video, make sure to head over to the link in the description below. You can download the project, run it, and make sure it works for your machine. And that is it for me. Keep on coding, guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.